Broadcasting from Boston, Massachusetts. You're listening to the Technology Equals Equality podcast.
Hey, welcome back to the Technology Equals Equality podcast. I'm your host, Lori Brooks, and this is episode 64. I am super pleased to welcome to the show today Shark Tank survivor Joe Moore, founder of First Defense Nasal Screens International, designed to help you breathe cleaner without drugs. Joe, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to kind of touch base on your Shark Tank experience a little bit later in the episode. But right now, we would love to know a story. How it is you saw the future, what it is you thought life would be like.
Yeah, well, I start out at the story kind of starts as 14 years ago, I was driving down an expressway in southern Florida, and it was a bad pollen day, and I didn't really have bad allergies per se, but I started sneezing, and I couldn't stop, and kept closing my eyes, and I couldn't keep them open, and traveling at about 80 miles an hour down the expressway, I ended up going over my line into the line of a semi, and I ended up in the ditch. He ended up in the median. Um, Took me back for a while, but when I stopped sneezing on the side of the road, all I could see was the dust particles in the sunlight, and I knew I didn't want that to happen again. And I started doing some research. I really didn't like how it felt, and like I said, I didn't know how allergies feel. But then I started doing the research, and I found that $367 billion a year was spent on nasal allergies in the United States alone, just on treatment and advertising and everything else. And it was like, well, there's a market there, and how many people suffered. So I started doing some development, and filed for a patent. And once after about 6 months of coming up with something that worked, I tried to go in the nose, and found out a bunch of companies had tried that, not been successful. So I went outside the nose, and then from there it was just um, trial and error. And like I say, 14 years later, it's here I am, and we're patented all over the world. We got 32 patents in Europe, and we just got our final patent in China. We got one in Japan now, of course, the United States. And so like I say, it's really taken off to an extent that everybody says, did you ever think it would get to this point? And I said, yes, I did, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have tried it. But it's just so many people. When the first person called me crying, saying that you changed my life, I think it was the very first one. We had the wildfires in Florida, and he was a 70-some-year-old man, and he said, I haven't mowed my lawn in 3 years. He said, that might not seem much to you. He said, but that was my life. And he said, not only did I mow my lawn for the first time, I did it during the wildfires. And he said, I thank you. And, he said, life's worth living again. And there's been numerous stories of people like that. A lady who, got to go to her son's wedding and stay for the reception because she had chemical sensitivities. Another lady, her son got to play baseball for the first time, and he was on 7 allergy medicines and no longer is on anything. Things like that, it just let me know that there was no turning back. And,
Yeah.
so went forward from there.
I love that journey, and I love how you wrapped it all up. You really went ahead. You found a pain that you were suffering from. You created a solution and then mapped it out to be able to scale in a manner that was workable, and that's impressive. And what I'd like to do though is kind of take a quick step back. Before that day when you were on the highway and you began that sneezing fit, what were you looking at life as being before you even thought about filter your life, before you began that drive that day? What was it that you thought life was going to be like? Tell us a story of what you thought you were going to be doing when you were a teenager, headed off into college and so forth. What did you think life was going to look like for you?
No, I didn't have any idea. As far as I didn't have a plan, but I between my junior and senior year of high school, I went to the Army. I went to Army boot camp, came back, graduated high school, then went in the Marine Corps, and did different things, and it really never knew what life was going to bring me. But then I ended up with a form of cancer, and I had 19 surgeries around the United States, and it took a couple years out of my life. And after that, it just became more of be happy with what you're doing. Try to leave a mark in the world. I'm a published author. I wrote a couple books here and there. I was just, whatever came to me. Everybody always said, "How do you have an idea and then actually follow through on it?" It was because if you think you're going to do something, you might as well try it. You might as well do it. So I did that, and I was in the insurance business. I got in the insurance business, and helping people out, protect their families and stuff. I got some gratification out of that, and I was doing that for 20 some years, and I got gratification from that. I got gratification from being published, but I really didn't feel like I'd ever really made a mark in my life, and then all of a sudden and change somebody's life for that. I mean, it was nice to know that kids went to college because of me, and if somebody died, it was sad, but I know that their family was protected because of me. So I got gratification from that, but it was just trying to, live my life as it came and be happy with what I had, and but always dream. I've always been a dreamer, and that's the biggest thing. Was always thought that just live your life and see what happens, and it kind of like even this, I kind of fell into it. Why my mind thought of it, I don't know, but I feel blessed that it did.
That's awesome. And I love how you explained that you didn't have a plan. There wasn't a series of thought processes that, you had as a kid or as a teenager that led you to this ultimate unfolding of, the Filter Your Life company at this point. It was realistically a moment in time in which your life had been transformed and changed, and you recognized that appreciation for just what was extremely important as a personal value. And I think that helped for you to begin taking those steps when that moment did occur, when you went into that sneeze fit and recognized that there was something that needed to change, and a definite need and a market for that. So I think it's important to point out for the audience, simply because when I first started the show, there were a number of people who explained the ways that they stumbled into their entrepreneurial journey, much like myself. And it's not too dissimilar from yours. I was diagnosed with Crohn's in 2009 and put on a medical leave. And, from there, I just kind of took off on a journey that it had been preceded by, a couple of years in real estate. I had the entrepreneurial bug, but I was really kind of kicked into, taking on the journey. But I want for others to hear that it doesn't necessarily have to be that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a plan, because the most recent guests that I've had have grown up with entrepreneurial parents, have had that background, have had the experience, and I think it's a great episode for, to kind of bring it back for those who are looking to maybe get into some sort of entrepreneurial journey, or further their own entrepreneurial journey, and just kind of recognize that it doesn't necessarily have to be a set plan that you've created. It may just be a flash, a moment that comes to you from some other area. What do you feel?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I've talked to the biggest thing is we got sued for my original trademark, even though we were trademarked, and um, we held the merit in the case. But as the lawyer told us, it's going to cost you $500,000 to fight this, or you can rebrand, and all of those were stumbling blocks that I know that a lot of people. It's a reason that they don't follow their dreams, but it's also a two. On the second note, it's a reason that some people give up on them.
Right.
And it's funny because I was having a local checkup one day, and one of the doctors years ago when I first started this, I told him about it, and he loved it, and he said, "I have this great idea." He said, "I just don't have the belief." He goes, "I know it can change my industry." As far as he was a gastroenterologist or whatever they call him. And anyway, he said it would change his industry, but he said, "I can't risk my kids' college and my mortgage and my future on this." And I know how many people, it makes you wonder how many people have these great ideas that just can't find, the belief in themselves to follow through on it. And I mean, I understand it, but it's sad in a way because people don't realize that the dream's still alive. If you believe in it strong enough and it makes sense, it's worth trying.
Right, right. No, I agree 100%. I think for a lot of people, the risk factors can be scary. The idea of failure for a lot of people is something that will hold them back. But one of the things that I try to always stress is there's really no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. As long as you take that moment, learn from it, and move forward, there's no such thing as failing. And that's something that I think can help those who are having that fear to kind of move forward with, is just kind of keeping in the back of your mind that there's no such thing as failing. What do you feel was the most difficult part of becoming an entrepreneur? What do you think was?
So learning the how to write a patent, learning how to take an idea and take it further. Listening to lawyers and people telling you it won't work and stuff like that, and it's finding that belief and following through on it was the hardest, because, like you say, the doubts come there, and once you pull the trigger and you decide to move forward, it's you got to be all in or not. And I think, like you said, it took me about 6 months to really grasp that. And I'll never forget, I was in a grocery store, and it was Halloween, and they had little things hanging in the aisles of the grocery store, and they were little bobbleheads that had a little plastic cape on them to hang from your rearview mirror of all the Halloween figures, and they were like $3.99 a piece for this little piece of plastic, and I saw 4 people buy those. And that was my aha moment. I said, if people will buy that and spend $3 or $4 on that, and they're spending all this money on allergies, why wouldn't they, if they had a lower quality of life, try this or use this? And I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I went home and I called the patent attorney and set up my appointment again with him and said, let's move forward.
That's outstanding. What do you feel was the biggest key to your success? Once you sat down with the patent attorney and kind of went through those harsher moments where you mentioned you were sued for that first one. What do you feel was the key for you that was the turning point in your practice?
Well, I think one of the biggest turning points was when one of the top doctors in the United States from the University of Florida at the time called me, and he had done a lot of significant work on the smallpox vaccine, and his son was one of the head doctors for Bill Gates and all of this stuff, telling me how it was going to change people's lives and how brilliant it was and all of that. And hearing that, and him wanting to get involved, and 2 of the other doctors, one working for the government, wanted to get involved, I think it was like, you know what, no matter what it takes, if these guys believe in me and I believe in myself, there's and then from there it was just perseverance. Not saying it came easy. It's hard when you're trying to establish a brand new market to something that people have never really thought of before. But like I say, having that backing of that support, and that just even that moral support, and the people like that believing in me.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, and then we started doing some trials, and you're getting testimonials from people. It was like, okay. And it took a lot longer. And I gotta say, now the Shark Tank, of course, gave us the exposure that we had never had before, and for people to start seeing it and thinking about it, and the people that have that lower quality of life due to air quality, they get it. It's you and I, if we're not allergy sufferers, or we're not working in a dirty mine or in a dirty workspace or traveling and getting sick on airplanes, we might see it as, novel idea, but we're not going to know the difference. But when you suffer every day and you have to take a puffer, or you have to take a medicine that gives you an increased heart rate or has side effects and stuff, and you know the difference of good quality air versus lower quality air, it just makes sense for you. And like I said, and then Shark Tank gave me that ability to get that out and to, get some exposure so that people started knowing about us.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was, one of the next questions was kind of delving into your Shark Tank experience, and kind of finding out what you felt was the biggest assist that you received from working with the sharks, and what you felt was the hardest part of, being on the show, presenting your product, making the deal. What do you feel was, your sticking point for you, and what do you think helped you through that experience?
Well, the opportunity to present it to people like that, that are that much that influential, and not just to the public but to myself. I was looking for, I went there. We said, "What are you looking for when you go there?" I was looking for a good investment, but I was also looking for somebody that knew, how to do it. One of the questions I asked years ago to a CEO, I was at a medical conference before the Shark Tank, and I said, this is beyond me, I said, this is getting to the point now. It's starting to grow. It's starting to really get some different fingers going in different directions. I said, how do you know when it's above you? And he said, surround yourself with the right people, and it never has to be. And it was some of the best advice I'd ever got, and it just made sense to me. And when he said that, you think about it, and that was what I was looking at for the Shark Tank. And then to go there and get the television exposure and stuff was phenomenal. It was kind of funny, how they thought I was a bozo when I walked out there, as they said on the show. And then next thing you know, they're offering me $4 million and a 10% royalty for life. It was like, oh, I guess, it was kind of, at that point, it kind of, my nervousness changed into, well, just let's put it this way, it changed
Yes,
to a different level.
Karen, and you did a lovely job, and I think it's important for the audience to recognize. I think the most successful entrepreneurs who do actually go on the show are the ones who go in with an intent aside from cash flow. When you're going into Shark Tank, if you're attempting to be on the show or, try out for the show, make sure that you have an intent outside of just getting the cash flow for your business, because that's not the point of the show. The point of the show is to go there exactly the way you did, Joe, to get the guidance, to get the exposure, to gain that roadmap for your own business.
I agree 100%. And one thing that I think that's really important that a lot of people don't know is that the Shark Tank, although I did a deal on there with Mark Cuban, David John, and Kevin O'Leary, it never did go through.
Oh.
So I do still own the company. And, like I said, we're in 50-some countries now. And unfortunately, it didn't go through. And I really, due to, some confidentiality contracts and stuff, I can't really say why. But when four people are trying to come together on a deal, it always, a lot of times it doesn't work, and that's where they say, a lot of those the products on Shark Tank, the deals that you see on TV, don't end up following through. And it wasn't due to due diligence or nothing else; it was due to other stuff. But the biggest thing comes down to it is that even though it didn't go through, what the Shark Tank show did for me was unfathomable of what I could have done on my own.
Right.
And I was in. To tell you how big that show is, I was in Hong Kong, had a meeting in China, flew into Hong Kong. I'm at the hotel, and I met some people there, and somebody went in, there was a big fashion show there, and this gentleman, everybody was like, "Ooh, that's so-and-so." And this reporter who was talking to me came up, and she said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to this guy." And he said, he's one of the biggest shoe designers from Madrid, Spain. And he says, "You don't have to introduce me to him. He's my hero. I saw him turn all that money down on Shark Tanks." He said, and next thing you know, we sat there and we talked all night. And for him to recognize me in Hong Kong, being from Spain, seeing it in Spain, shows you just how big that show really is and how much exposure comes from that. And, and how that, like I say, it's a worldwide thing. It's not the United States. It's, it's the markets are unbelievable that show shows in now all around the world.
There's very few people on the planet at this point that don't know of the show. So the exposure level in and of itself can, like you said, be exponential beyond what you can imagine. And kudos to you.
And that's what it's done for me. It's really, truly what it's done for me.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And, no, I can't imagine. Let me correct that. I think it's absolutely wonderful. So congrats and kudos to you.
Thank you.
What would you say if I told you that I happen to have had a time machine and we could kind of go back 10 to 15 years? But the trick is when we go back, I can only let you tell yourself one thing, just one. What do you think that would be?
Well, if you'd almost have to go back, I would say 30 years. If you go back 30 years, then I can give you a better answer.
Let's go back 30. We'll roll it back.
Okay. I would say that I would tell myself, pay more attention in school and do, I did good in school, but everything came pretty easy to me, and I could have done a lot more. And the thing about it is when you're the older you are and you're trying to relearn stuff or not relearn it, you're starting to learn stuff that you never learned before, that you could have. It takes, so much more to do something when you don't know how to do it than if you already had, more business sense or whatever. I've owned business and had good business sense, but when it comes to like writing the patents and all that stuff, like I said, I just wish I would have worked harder on my education so that it would have made this journey a lot easier.
Focus. That's one of the resounding answers is truthfully, if you go back through the episodes, focus. And it's something that, one of my favorite podcast hosts, John Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, always says, follow one course until success. You got to focus, and if I could go back all those years myself, I think I'd tell myself the exact same thing, Joe. Just cut it out, slow down, focus on one thing, and get there.
I heard two great things that have inspired me over my life, and one of them was, the difference between a best-selling author and a amateur writer is a best-selling author is an amateur that never gave up. And the other one was, I believe it was Mark Wahlberg. Somebody asked him one time, I saw it in an interview, said, if they sit down with you and they ask you, do you think I should go into, acting? He said, heck no, I would not go into acting for nothing. And he said, it's probably the worst decision you could ever make in your life. And the lady asked him, whoever's interviewing him, said, why would you say that? He said, because if they believe me, what I say, they'll never be successful anyway. But if they walk out of there saying, what's he know? I'm going to do it anyway, then they believe in themselves. Okay. But if you're going to believe somebody else, what somebody else tells you and not follow through on it, and it made sense to me. It said you have to have that belief in yourself that you can do this.
I haven't heard that interview with Mark Wahlberg, but I think that's funny that he did that, and I think that's a great response because it's the truth. If you're going to just base it off of somebody else's opinion, you might as well call it a day.
Right, you didn't have your belief in yourself in the first place.
Exactly, and nothing anybody says to you is going to change that. So, Joe, the show is really designed to help entrepreneurs gear their journey, find the pain, and create a solution. So we've gone through your journey. We've heard a couple of ups and downs that you've had there. But what we'd really like to do is help you solve a pain in a brand new industry that you yourself are breaking wide open here. Even though the industry was there, I don't think the nasal filters were something that was very well known in the population in the manner that you've now created. So I'd love to know, if you had a magic wand and could change anything at all in your business, what would it be and why?
I guess it's trying to get to the masses, letting people, there's, less than 1% of the world's population, even as big as Shark Tank is, 1% of the population still only know we exist. And our reorder rates are like 78%. And when I get these testimonials of people that it's changing their life, I know that there's so many people out there suffering. It's getting the word to everybody that there is a solution. Whether you want to try it or not is up to you. But if I just know how many people suffer, and the ones that do suffer that know about us have a higher quality of life now, and it would be giving that ability to everybody that does suffer, give them the ability or at least the chance to try it, to say, hey, this, there is a solution out there. And I mean, I've actually had people tell me, several say the life's worth living again. And to me, it's not about the money as much as it is about doing something and helping people and leaving a mark in life. And when you know that you changed the quality of somebody's life, and they, there was one customer that I'll never forget. I still answer our phones. I still talk to all of our customers when they call in and stuff if I get a chance. And he actually told me, he said, life wasn't worth living. He was waiting to die. And he said, you don't know what you gave me back. And that to me, it means more to me than anything else. And like I said, if I could share that with the more people, is really what it comes down to. And then that's what I would want to do, which we're working on, and it's getting there. And this fall, we're going to market to all the stores and all of this stuff. You know, we're ready. It's taken a long time to get there, but it's you know, like I said, our biggest hurdle is letting people know that you do exist.
The ability to have greater impact. Definitely. I completely understand. That's part of the reason for the show. So hopefully we will be able to assist you in creating that greater impact. So
Well, I appreciate that very much.
certainly. Well, I thank you for sharing with the community.
Well, I thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Joe, thank you again for an exceptionally fun conversation. Techie community, thank you guys for hanging out with us here for episode 64. If you are interested in breathing cleaner without drugs, reach out to Joe over at filteryourlife.com, or you can always reach him through our show notes page at technology-equality.com/Joe Moore. Remember to believe in yourself on this journey. And until our next episode, when we continue to hear the journey, find the pain, and create solutions, enjoy the week.